Equity payout is the highest reward you can get for joining the startups early, for going higher salary that you can get from more mature companies. But even that is no longer safe because of the new type of acquisition, Halo, hire and license out. Here's why. You see, in traditional M&A, right, you have a very kind of like straightforward structure. You have some sort of equity ownership that is divided between investors, your execs and key employees, like those early employees, right? And the rest of the company. So new hires, people they've added, maybe additional rounds of, hiring, things of that nature. And then at acquisition, whether there's a straight cash and stock payout, right, for the acquisition, those individuals usually get proportional rate of that payout based on their share of equity that they own. So for example, if you're an employee who joined and happen to own like 0.5% of a company, you're going to get 0.5% of equivalent of an acquisition. So if the company, I don't know, was bought, what is it? Easy enough math. If the company was bought for $1 billion, 1% is 10 million, you own 0.5%, you get paid like 5 million, right? Just something of that nature. Now, this is how it's traditionally usually works, but they came up with this method of Halo, hire and license out. And essentially what it does structurally is that they don't technically buy the company. They hire certain key leadership and key individuals from the company, and they license out basically the rest of the tech stack that the company owns, the rest of the solution that the company owns to consume for themselves. And the way essentially it pays out is that you still have, for example, same say share, right, between the investors, execs, and key employees and the rest of the company. But during the acquisition, including the licensing fees, investors will be kept whole. They always be kept whole because that's how you kind of like protect your reputation, right, in the market, in case in future you want to start a new startup and you want to get those investors to invest in that startup. You want to take care of them. And then those execs and key employees essentially take majority, if not all, that's why I'm saying it's a big maybe, of rest of the value of the company that they essentially acquired through this M&A process, and the rest of the company gets nothing. So if you're not an essential employee, you barely get anything. Now, why would they do that? Why would they pursue this method versus what is clearly and evidently more favorable to the rest of the company and more fair if we're being, ethical about it? Why would they pick that over the traditional M&A? Well, traditional M&A have a lot of rules and regulations these days, especially in the tech world where a lot of these executives basically tell you like, hey, if you want to be successful, if you want to really like achieve certain heights, you're going to build a monopoly, right? They're very open about it. And Microsoft tried, Google tried, Amazon tried, like they're all trying and succeeding to a certain extent in creating monopolies within their certain niches of the tech market. But the problem is government doesn't like it. It's not friendly to consumers. Consumers get stuck paying higher fees. It can be predatory to other companies because these major conglomerates can go after those companies and really destroy them at the very foundation, essentially preventing the growth of those companies, preventing creation of the new jobs, economic development of those regions, because they don't care, right? You've heard in my other videos I talk about these companies as much as they can talk about them caring about what's happening in the places where they're at. They don't. They live and die by the holy grail of the, shareholder value. If it's not contributing to it, they don't care about it, right? So because of this, there are rules in place. Rules in place mean your acquisition can get scrutinized, maybe not under this current administration in the United States, but prior administrations, especially when SEC was led by Lina Khan. They were rightfully trying to protect the consumer and be very scrutinizing about different types of acquisition. Now, the companies realize that if they go with this Halo approach and they say, hey, we're not acquiring anyone, we're actually just hiring the top key talent that created the entire product and service, and then we're licensing that product and service from that company, it's not an acquisition. We just happen to hire a lot of people, they happen to leave that company, and we're still paying that company. You see, the company is still out there. Now, if you think that this is not really that prevalent, let me give you a couple of examples. Amazon did it with one of the AI companies and essentially what they call created a zombie company, because that company essentially has the revenue, but the revenue is coming from a single customer, Amazon. The company lost all the key employees, so they're not really pushing that product that far. And guess what? They ended up laying off a bunch of people because you no longer need them. You only have one customer to serve. Why would you need 50 salespeople, 100 customer success people, support people, and all that stuff? they're not really doing it. And guess what? Once the license runs out, all of those key hires that Amazon brought over the company, they'll just build an internal homebred solution and then they won't even need that licensing agreement anymore. Google did the same thing with AI voice startup with Hume recently, right? Again, grabbed all the key employees, left a zombie company. Meta did it with Scale AI. This was actually one of the biggest ones because the head of their AI group, and I'm forgetting his name if they have it here. I think it's like Andrew something. I don't know. I'm sure it's, yeah, Alexander Wang. He's actually now leading the AI group within Meta, and they hired him from this company. So the dude made like billions of dollars, and he has a job, and the rest of the company doesn't. And all the people who used to buy services from Scale AI stopped buying it because Meta now owns them, and they're like, we don't want Meta to see what we're doing. So essentially, again, Scale AI has a single customer right now, which is Meta, and Meta even tried to do it recently, right, with like another startup. So it's an ongoing play that they keep trying to repeat because it works. So unless you're a key employee in this company, and actually, I can define key employee. I made this very quick breakdown. You're probably okay. And I'll talk about probably okay. If you're a part of the executive team, you're one of the investors or key engineering talent, and you're definitely not okay if you're any part of these teams. The reason I'm saying you're probably okay is because, trust me, I've seen plenty of executives being cut last minute or not included in the key employees because if you're like chief HR officer, you're not going to be that important to this acquisition. They can get rid of you, CFO, CISO, right, CIO. You're probably not that important unless you have direct involvement and you're part of the key engineering talent. And investors, again, depending on your preferential statement and how the licensing structure works, even as an investor, you might not be safe, right? Like depending on how they want to treat you and how they work with you. If you're like some small investor, they can say like, hey, tough luck, man. Like here's a portion of your licensing fee. Yes, it's not what we promised you when we were raising the funds, but that's all you get. So even within that environment, you're not 100% safe. But again, if your job title has anything to do with one of these functions, I would not consider yourself as a key employee. As much as you can be very valuable, very impactful, everyone thinks you're amazing and you are amazing. If they can build and support the product without you, you're not that important. And so with that, my big advice to any one of you, including myself, like that's a big consideration for myself, for the next at least 5 years, right? So like 3 years of this current presidency, and then I'm also adding a couple of years before whoever is a new SEC lead and how they're gonna get how will they manage to pass some of these regulations through then that administration and that composition of like Senate and the House here in the United States. Like I don't think anything's going to change. And I think more and more, especially technology companies, will keep trying to apply this halo approach. And so because of this, the traditional method of saying like, you know what, I'm going to give up portion of the salary. I have a job A and job B, job A with a startup, job B with some like, more mature company, maybe less exciting, less sexy, but that company pays me, say, my full salary that I would like according to the market. And this company A, which is a startup, pays me 70% of that salary, but they're promising to give me a bunch of equity and that equity potential will be worth millions of dollars. Again, if you're not required to build that product, and you kind of have to think through that based on your role, and you have to be very also honest with you, they can take that entire product solution that they've built and build it elsewhere without you, and you're not really required for that success, I would not think of yourself as a key employee, and I would negotiate for the higher salary, more of a market represented salary, or just take the other job versus taking the equity, because that equity is not guaranteed. And I know people can promise you much. You can bring it up during the hiring process, especially maybe if you're interviewing with like key leaders, and you can say like, hey, I've seen all of these major conglomerates do this halo approach. What you can do for me, unless they're going to put pen to paper, some sort of a guarantee, which I doubt they will. But you can try to negotiate. You can say, I want a special guarantee that in case of any non-traditional acquisition, I'm going to be paid out the equity value comparable to whatever, the market, comparable to the value of the company, and based on the latest round of funding at the time of that Halo acquisition, you have to pay me that. Like if they'll put in writing that, that's safer, I would say. Still maybe not guaranteed. You're going to have to consult with a lawyer and hire like a decent lawyer to think through that language. But to be honest, it's unlikely going to happen unless, again, you're really crazy, one-of-a-kind type of hire. They're not going to go to those lengths. no matter what they tell you, and they're going to tell you that they're going to take care of you, they're going to tell you that, hey, it's all going to be okay. When things going to happen, you're going to be great. Understand that for a lot of people, these kind of acquisitions are life-changing events. In my career, and I've been in investment world, in private equity, in venture capital, I've been in major corporations and been part of acquisitions, right, of like multiple companies. When we acquired, my companies have been acquired. I've met only two CEOs who really meant it when they said, hey, I'm going to take care of everyone on my team. And they were willing to jeopardize the actual acquisition unless every single employee was treated fairly. That's how rare it is, right? So of hundreds and hundreds of people I've met, only two really were that good and that caring about their employees. The rest, they'll look at you and they'll say, hey, Tahir is great. I know I promised him a lot, but it's $100 million, $200 million, $1 billion plus payout for me, a few of my closest people who started this company with me, and a few of the investors. What are the chances I'm going to talk to Tahir again? But I'll be seeing my family every single day. I have to do it for my family. So like, I don't judge them necessarily because that's a human nature. You're going to take care of the people close to you. But I'm just telling you that they're very unlikely to jeopardize the entire acquisition, the entire Halo acquisition, just because they promised to treat you fairly. So, in summary, keep in mind that this is going to be something that more companies will try to use. Do not take the equity now for granted and just accept the fact that, hey, I'm going to take a pay cut just because I have a potential for this equity, because you might be screwed over and you're going to work for several years at a lower salary that you could have been making elsewhere. Try to negotiate it into your contract, but if you cannot negotiate into the contract, go take a fair market type of job that offers fair market salary. Because as much as I love, trust me, I've been on the positive end of the equity payouts. I know it can be great. It's no longer guaranteed, and you have to keep it in mind. I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.